All right, guys, this video I'm going to explain how to install your windowsill into your little project that you're building. Remember, you're framing this inside corner up, and then you're assigned this corner to drywall. The drywall, while you're waiting for it to dry, and I know you're practicing here, while you're waiting for that to dry, you can go ahead and install your sill. One of the biggest problems you're going to have, we're going to make custom windowsills for this project. We're going to make them out of plywood because we're practicing. But it's important to pay attention. This is a project that you often have to do. It's high-end carpentry where you're manufacturing and making your own windowsills out on a job site. One of the first things you're going to have to do is a better job of framing your building up, right? So this OSB hanging in your opening can't hang into the opening like this. This is the exterior sheathing. This is the interior drywall. This is the stud, or the windowsill, and the jack stud here. When you're cutting your wall sheathing out, if you've made that mistake, it will be impossible to install your windows. So the first thing you're going to have to do, you're going to need a lot of tools for this operation. You're going to need your reciprocating saw here, or your sawzall. You're going to need, to finish this, you're going to need a router with a 1/4-inch roundover bit. If we were doing real windowsills, we'd probably be using a different router bit, an OG edge or something different. We're also going to need our jigsaw. You're going to need a miter box, and you're going to need an impact gun to do this. And step one is you're going to have to clean your window out. Get all this. Get this all flush and out of the way. It doesn't have to look pretty. This is why we normally cut the sheathing out with a router when we're doing it professionally, so it gets it good and you also need a lot more screws around your exterior sheathing isn't installed properly, so we need to screw that back on to get that done properly. So I assume lots of your windows are like this, guys. You need to, this is, and most of the stiffers too. So after you get that done, you get your sheathing screwed on. The next step is you're going to have to cut a piece of windowsill. Now we're going to use 5.5-inch wide, 3/4-inch CDX plywood, which is this framing grade plywood, but since we're practicing here, we're trying to conserve a little bit of money. This has a little bit of a bow in it, so I'm looking at it, right? It's plywood. It's 5 ply, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plies it's got. And we're gonna router the bottom edge after we notch it in. We're gonna rip it on the table saw 5.5 inches is the first step. How I came up with the cross cut length is this. I measured the distance between my frame, which was 12.25 inches. It's like 12 1/8, something like that. So I measured in between here, in between my rough frame, and now I'm gonna add, for my windowsill, 2 inches. In this case, we're gonna add 2 inches on each side. So what I did was I took 12.25, I mark it, and I'm gonna add 4 more inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I cross cut it right there at 16.25 inches on the miter box, all right? Now I have this piece that's going to be installed like this, but the problem is I have to notch out for my little ears here that I'm going to router over. I'm going to show you how to do that. So now we're going to come back over to our sawhorses. We're going to measure this distance from the exterior sheathing to the inside of the drywall, and in this case we're using a 2x4 wall, so it's always 4 9/16. 4 9/16 or 4 5/8. If you buy jam material, you can often buy it 4 5/8, or you can buy it 6 5/8 if you're using 2x6 walls. So in this case, we're using 2x4 walls, so we're going to use 4 5/8 inch trim around it. All right, that accounts for the exterior sheathing and the interior 1/2-inch drywall. That's standard stuff. So now we're going to measure in 2 inches, maybe 2 1/16 to give ourselves a little gap. We're going to take our speed square and we're going to make a notch here, like so. We're going to measure it back 4 9/16, like I just said. 4 9/16, 4 5/8 about. We're going to make a mark there. We're going to notch this out like so, guys. Okay? That gets cut out, and we're gonna do the same thing on this side as well. We're gonna measure back 4 5/8 and put a little mark, and we're also gonna measure over 2 1/16, something like that. Give ourselves a little bit of space to get the thing in there. We don't want this too tight because it will be difficult to get in there. We're not gonna sledgehammer it in. All right, so we're gonna notch out with a jigsaw this and this. Now, if I was doing this, I would probably use a circular saw and a jigsaw. So you're gonna take a circular saw first because the jigsaw makes an ugly cut. I want to minimize the volume of work I do. I let the machine do the work, right? So I'm gonna plug in my circular saw and cut as much out first of all with my portable circular saw. I'm gonna set the depth on the portable circular saw, just like so. And then we're gonna notch this guy out. Being careful not to overcut our marks. We're gonna do the same on this one here. Now that we have that done, we're going to take our jigsaw and plug it in and finish our notch. Yellow. So your windowsill is going to look something like this before we router it, and we're going to double check to make sure it fits before we go take it and machine it. All right, so it's going to fit in there like so. Now we need to machine, but we're going to machine the bottom side of it. All right, is the odd thing about it. So it depends. At this point, you have the depending on the lumber. Maybe what we'll do is we're going to machine both sides. We're going to machine this side with our router, and we're going to machine the bottom side, but we're gonna make sure we do not machine this and we do not machine this. We just want the areas that are going to be exposed because this is going to get covered. This area right here now is going to get an extension jam installed on it. All right, and then we're going to put casement molding here to cover it. Okay, so you have to be aware of what you're doing all the time while you're doing stuff like this. So we're going to go back. We're going to switch it to the router. We're going to put our 1/4-inch roundover bit in our router, make sure it's set properly. This one's all set to go. So we're going to undo that, plug it in, and machine our sill. So if you remember, the rotation of the router bit's going to go this way, so I'm going to go into my work this way. Flip it over and do the same on this side. Alright, so that's what your windowsill will look like when you install it. It should look like that. You'll have rounded over edges and it should look something like that. Then we're going to go ahead and fasten it. When you fasten it, we're going to have 3/4-inch pieces on this side and this side, covering this side and this side coming up the wall. That'll be the next lesson. So you're going to try not to put screws or nails anywhere that they're going to be exposed. So I would make sure, if I was doing this, I would mark this, and I would make sure I install my screws back here so I didn't have wood filler stuff to deal with later. All right, I'm minimizing the volume of work by taking my time. All right, because if I had to come back here and put wood putty and everything and sand it all up, I wasted hours of time that I didn't have to do any of that, right? Because if I hide my fasteners in the right locations, the only other place I might, if this was bigger, is I may pre-drill a hole and actually install a nail there and there. If I was using a nail gun, I might nail it there and there. But in this case, we don't need to do such a thing. We just would be able to hide 2 fasteners. So if they're hidden, it's gonna be fine to use like a 1 5/8 screw like this to fasten it. If they're not hidden, you're gonna have to use a trim nail and countersink the trim nail and cover it with putty. All right, is everyone with me? All right, guys, that's how you put your windowsill in. Thanks for listening.